In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the game against Gladbach. We'll be previewing the Champions League decider against Shakhtar, reviewing the Bologna game, previewing Cagliari game, this week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com. Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host, Nima, Tavallaey, whose voice is a little bit hoarse because my local team is finally back in the, what we in Sweden say, the elite of Swedish football, meaning in the top three tiers. Dramatic away win on Sunday night in a snow, sleet, rain-covered Åtvidaberg at 5 p.m. I was freezing my beep off, but we did it. We're back after 10 years, so my voice is a little bit worn out, but we will do a show as always. I'm going to introduce our panelist, SempreInter.com's preview writer, Mr. Mohamed Nassar.
Good evening, everyone.
Good to have you. We're also joined by a good friend from London, Mr. William Beckman.
Good evening, Nima. I'm desperate to give you a throat lozenge, but cycles don't work like that, so I'll wish you the best and stop there.
Thanks, Will. And we're also joined by two mics, not one but two. The first one, our good friend Michael Gallo from Canada.
Hello, everyone. And just as we sit down to do this podcast, I go to put on the Fiorentina Genoa game in the background, but it was not available. All I could find was Hoffenheim and Augsburg. So that game, in Italian commentary, by the way. So that game is in the background as we do our great podcast here.
That's awesome. We're also joined by Reverend Mike, as I like to call him, the Athletics, Mr. Mike Piellucci. How are you, Mike?
Oddly hopeful about all things Inter, which is not where I thought I'd be today, but here we are.
And we're also joined by a very special guest. He's the DFL worldfeed co-commentator for the Bundesliga, Mr. Chris Williams. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I probably feel like I should apologise for the Hoffenheim versus Augsburg game that you're probably going to watch.
Well,
it's okay. I'll take any type of soccer, no matter what. So I'm good with it.
I mean, if you're still saying that at half-time, fair play to you.
Well, let's get to more important matters or matters that concern Inter. I mean, the game against Gladbach. I want to hear your thoughts on that, Chris. It was a crazy game for everyone who watched it, or what we Inter fans call just another Wednesday. But I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, it was so much back and forth, and Gladbach were very annoyed at the end because of the result. I'm keen to hear what you make of the game.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting game to watch, and it's the sort of game that we want to see in the Champions League week in, week out. Lots of attacking football, plenty of defensive errors, midfield battles. I thought it had it all. It was a really good game. I suppose we're going to get through to the disallowed goal at the very end. Obviously, Gladbach were up in arms. Not sort of goal you see disallowed much in the Bundesliga. I'm going to be honest with you. The interference in play or the interference with a goalkeeper. But it's the sort of thing that I've certainly seen in the rest of Europe. I've seen it in the Champions League before. I've seen it in the Premier League. It's probably happened in Serie A as well. I think that Gladbach could pull themselves back into it, and they were probably just a little bit miffed at the end of the day that they couldn't get the result that they wanted, because it's happened to them a couple of times already in this particular Champions League group where they've not quite got the result they felt they deserved. So bar their Shakhtar results, I think they were hoping to get something back. But I mean, they've set themselves up with a great chance now.
For sure. I'm going to hand you over to Mo. Did you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking offline before recording about the potential biscotto. And I guess any of the other panelists will probably ask you about that. But I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of, on podcasts and media, Italian media and elsewhere, there's a lot of talk about the various permutations and the various potential ambitions that different teams might have. Has there been any talk in German media about Inter possibly not wanting to draw and wanting to throw away the match should it come to that towards the end in order to avoid going into the Europa League? Has this been a scenario that you've heard discussed, or has it just been focused on the Gladbach versus Real Madrid match?
Yeah, it's been completely focused on the Gladbach game, to be honest, the German media. Whether Inter don't want to step into the Europa League is probably a decision for yourselves. But I mean, from Gladbach, they're quite happy to either be in the Europa League or to go forward in the Champions League. Obviously, it's the first time they've been in the Champions League for 4 years. I personally don't think they've balanced the domestic rigors with the European ones, especially this season of all seasons where the games are coming thick and fast. They have done quite well in Europe so far, but their domestic form sort of suffered a bit. I feel that for Gladbach going forward, if they want to get back into the Champions League next season, I don't know whether they can sustain European football in the new year, February onwards. I think it might hamper them. It certainly hampered their league position already. So everything's focused on, will they get a result against Real Madrid, really, and will they go forward, and how that will ultimately affect them in the Bundesliga.
Will, did you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, it was sort of leads on quite nicely from the Real Madrid, the previewing the Real Madrid match. Incidentally, I've just been looking up the origin of the word biscotto while we were talking there, and apparently it comes from horse racing. So I've learned something already this evening. But anyway, with this Gladbach Real Madrid match, obviously I think you could make an argument, Chris, that Marco Rose is almost in a trickier position than Zinedine Zidane in terms of preparing this match, because whereas Real Madrid need to go for the win to be certain, and only in a certain case would they be happy to go through with a draw. Gladbach know that a draw is good enough because they'd be guaranteed to have at least Inter and Real Madrid behind them. So, do you think that's going to maybe impact the way that he sets this game up? Because, I don't see Gladbach as a team that necessarily would play for a cautious match. Would play a cautious match naturally, but it's often quite difficult to prepare a match when you know that you've got 2 results out of 3 available. What sort of approach do you expect? Because all the talk has been about Real Madrid, certainly in the Italian media, about whether they're going to screw Inter over. But there are 2 teams in this match. So I wondered what you thought about the way they might approach this.
Yeah, Gladbach are a very attacking side under Marco Rose. Obviously came from Red Bull Salzburg, so they've got that predefined way of playing, which is quick transition, high energy, very fast football, front to back, as quick as they can. And he sort of brought that over to Gladbach. And yeah, they don't really know how to play for a draw. So I'm not sure if they would. I mean, for instance, they started the season off quite poorly, were pretty much wiped by Borussia Dortmund, recovered from that, and have drawn a couple of games. Most notably, the worst game I think for them to draw was their one against Augsburg at home, who a side in Bavaria, mid to low table. You would expect a side like Gladbach to be picking up all 3 points there. So I think if Marco Rose goes into this game against Real Madrid in their second stadium as such, in their academy stadium, if he goes for that draw, I think they might get turned over because they don't really know how to play that non-attacking way. So if they look defensive and they decide to play defensive, I don't really know if they've got the ability to do that just on the flick of a switch, and to do it against a team. I know Real Madrid are struggling, but it's still Real Madrid, and they're a very good side with some excellent players. So I think he will go out and try and win this. I mean, it's not that long ago that these 2 teams played at home. Gladbach thought they should have beaten Real Madrid, and they let that game slip in the very dying stages again. It's been a bit of a key with Gladbach in the Champions League when they have dropped points, and they will want to get one over. And of course, they'll have seen what Shakhtar have done, and they battered Shakhtar over 2 games 10-0. So they will really fancy their chances with this.
Mike Gallo, did you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, hey Chris. I'm wondering how many games have you commentated on with Gladbach this year, and if you're comfortable in talking about maybe how Lazzaro has looked for them this year, being on loan from Inter.
Yeah, so I've not done that many live games this year. So what we do a highlights package. So every single week with Amazon, we run a highlights package, and yeah, I mean front to back they have been pretty good throughout, but that maybe has been the whole of the team has been that way. I mean, if you're looking at players who have stood out, it's more the attacking players really. I mean, Lazzaro's he's played there, but he's not maybe been as influential as the likes of Thuram or Player, etc., or even Hoffman before he got injured. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely a player that Marco Rosa's looked at, he's utilised. He seems to have fitted in when he's played. Whether he's going to be someone they would look at taking on full time, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not even 100% sure whether Inter would want him to do that. But he's only played 5 times this season in the Bundesliga, and he got his goal. I'm not 100% sure you'll see that much of him because he's only played a bit part in the Champions League. But I mean, he's doing okay. Whether he would break in to the Gladbach side full time on a regular basis going forward, I'm not completely sure, and that's going to depend on a lot of things for Gladbach. Although they're not in a financial trouble as such, they have been affected quite badly by the lack of fans. Their gate receipts are a high percentage of their earning, as well as their shop day income, their match day income. It's probably one of the biggest that they get. So I would say it would be a stretch for him to stay on after this summer, unless the two clubs can come to a deal.
Mike Piellucci, did you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, Chris. I feel like watching this match, just knowing what I do about Gladbach, that I'm almost getting a glimpse of the future in some senses, right? There's so many talents on this squad, and Thuram and Playa and Zakaria, to name a few, that clearly have bright futures. And like you said, maybe Gladbach isn't in, I don't know if the condition is so dire, come the summer that they have to sell, but it feels like there are a lot of players on that squad that will move on to bigger and better at some point. If you, having watched this team, know this team, if you could bet on one of these guys to become a household name on the international level, which one of them would you really put all your weight behind in terms of becoming that star level player, maybe elsewhere in Germany or just on a bigger stage in another country?
Oh, it's a good question and a hard question because they have got a lot of good players at the moment.
There are a lot of options.
But I think, yeah, there is a lot of options. For me, there's 2 really that come to mind, and that is Alassane Playa and Marcus Thuram, both forward-minded players, with Thuram playing more of a left-sided winger role. But those 2 have set up a really good partnership, not just this season, but last season as well. They worked very, very well together. It's pretty much those guys that fired Gladbach into the Champions League. I was lucky to go and see them play a couple of times last season live in the stadium when I was still able to travel into the stadium. And yeah, they were a joy to watch. And that one particular game against Mainz, they tore them apart. And I mean, they do have quite a few other players. There's Florian Neuhaus, who's a central midfielder who you would expect to become more of a household name as well. Briel Mbolo, when he does score his goal, when he finally gets his goals, they tend to be quite spectacular. So, I mean, he's another player you can keep a hold of in your mind. But yeah, some of the players that they've got there, I would have expected maybe Jan Sommer, the goalkeeper, to move on at some point. And that's not to say he's at the wrong club. It's just there are some which you would call bigger clubs in inverted commas, I think you would benefit from it. Borussia Dortmund especially need a new goalkeeper, and I think Jan Sommer would top their list. But for Gladbach, it's them getting themselves into Champions League year on, year out, because you're quite right. Some of the players that they've got will be tempted to go elsewhere if other teams in Germany, probably Leipzig, Dortmund and Bayern, if they were to come in for them, I think they would move. And then other teams in Europe, certainly teams in Italy, if they came in for them, they would be tempted. Likewise in England as well, and probably Spain. So it will be key to Gladbach to keep hold of these players. But what they have done in the past previously is when they have had to let go players go, And Torgan Hazard's probably one of the biggest they've had to let go in the last couple of seasons. They have replaced them quite well. So they are quite good on the recruitment stage.
For sure, for sure. So, but if we look forward to the game itself, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, in Italy, they're talking about the biscotto that Inter that they'll just draw this game. Obviously, Real Madrid have to win it to be 100% sure of going through. A draw is enough for Gladbach. So what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think Real Madrid are quite desperate to get through because of the poor performances that they've shown, not just in the Champions League, but also in their domestic league. And if they go all out attack, Marco Rosa comes from a stable of football where he knows how to deal with that. They can defend well, and they can certainly hit on the break. So we could see a situation where Real go all out, guns blazing, and Gladbach are able to soak up that pressure and hit them on the break. And I think it'll be quite interesting if that happens early on and Gladbach are able to get an early goal. I think we will see where Real Madrid are in their circle of life at the moment, whether they collapse or whether they're able to recover from it. I think if Gladbach go behind and they go behind early and they get stung by a couple of quick goals in quick succession, I think maybe they themselves might then look at, is this really worth it for the rest of this competition for us? Are we going to go into the Europa League? Are we going to drop out? What's going to happen? How's this then going to affect us? So they are playing well, and they have had a few good results of late. But as I say, they're currently 7th in the league, and I think the key for them is to finish 4th again. But they'll have to balance that off with, in the boardroom, how much did they lose by not getting into the final stages around 16 and above? And what's the balance of that if they were then to make those final stages and then finished outside the top 4? What would the financial implications be? So I don't think it's as straightforward as for Gladbach as they'd like it to be, really. But I can see it being a very close game. Now I've said that, it's probably going to be 0-0.
Probably, yeah, and Inter winning and all celebrations in Spain and tears in Milan. That would be the most Inter thing ever. If people want to follow you on social media, and if you got something that you want to plug that's coming out, then the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks very much. Well, yeah, if anybody wants to follow me on social media, I'm mostly active on Twitter, which is Chris78Williams. And outside of that, if you've got any interest in the Bundesliga and you've got yourself an Amazon capable player, just ask Alexa to play the Bundesliga and ask for the highlight show, and you can hear me on it.
Sounds great. We'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for coming on, Chris.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Right. The game itself, to me, I think we pretty much covered most of the things, the talking points there. I thought Inter looked good again. The 3-5-2 really suits Inter. They were lucky with some of the calls, not so much as the calls, but some of the finally some things going Inter's way, such as him being offside because he did interfere in play. But as opposed to earlier this season when things have not gone Inter's way, so these things always tend to even out. But having said that, I still, last week, Mo, you said 25% chance Inter go through. Is it still 25% for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think when it's out of your hands, then it's out of your hands. So I don't think I think there's a very high probability that we're going to beat Shakhtar. That's for me. That's not the question. The question is the result in Madrid. And this is the position that we're in. And if it's not in your hands, I still reckon there's about a 25% chance. It's good that we crossed the hurdle last week. It was very important, of course, because it would have been a 0% chance today. But I don't think our odds are any better because it's still not in our control.
For sure. What about you, Will? Where are you?
No, I would increase the odds slightly because I think in theory, on paper at least, the game away to Gladbach is harder than the one at home to Shakhtar. Obviously, this is Inter, so sometimes logic doesn't apply. But I think of the two, I was more sceptical about Inter's ability to win that match last week. So I was very pleasantly surprised by the performance that was offered up. Deserved win despite all the suffering that they put us through at the end. As far as qualification is concerned, I think there's there's certainly a chance. Stranger things have happened, but I'm struggling to see a scenario where that match in Spain doesn't end in a draw, if I'm completely honest. Because while we can all agree that it would be ridiculous for Real Madrid in particular to start the match with that intention, there is a very good possibility that we're into to be 2-0 or 3-0 up with 20 minutes left, and they're still 1-1, not because they've tried to manufacture it, but just because they're two teams that have happened to cancel each other out, which is more than possible. Then they're not going to take undue risks to search for the win. Real Madrid could, in theory, want to finish top because that'll give them a favourable draw in the last 16. But given the mess they're in, I don't think they can really, afford to be sort of getting ideas above their own station. They'll be happy, I think, just to get through, given some of the performances they've put in this Champions League so far this season. So I would say it's certainly below 50%. I would say maybe 35, 40%. Of course, the most Inter scenario possible would be, that the draw does happen and we don't win our match against Shakhtar. So that is certainly not a scenario that to exclude. But
that would mean, I mean, if Shakhtar Donetsk, if I'm not mistaken, they've got 7 points and Real Madrid have 7 points. If Shakhtar draw and Real draw, then Shakhtar and Gladbach are through, because they beat Real Madrid in both of those games. So I think the only thing that speaks for Inter is the fact that Real Madrid absolutely have to win now, in order to be sure.
Unless we win.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thing, this is the madness about this, right? What really needs to happen is we need Pazza Inter to go through, right? Because if we're 3-0 up at half time, Real Madrid and Gladbach are not going to go over their own halfway line in the second half. We need to do what happened against Tottenham 2 years ago, or what happened in any of most of Inter's European matches. We need to be 1-0 down with a minute left, and then we need to turn it around in the last 2 minutes. That's actually theoretically the most sort of efficient way to get this done. But obviously that's not. It's not. You can't plan a match like that. So we're kind of we're in a very difficult position. Although we just need to win, so maybe we're not. I don't know. It's the most Inter scenario ever, and I think we'll end up third, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that is the feeling I have as well. Although, let me be honest. My feeling is we're fourth or second. I don't see I don't see us finishing third. I think it's fourth or second. It's one of the two. What about you?
Fine.
Yeah, which would be fine.
Not third. We don't need more Europa League. We don't need more Belgium in January in our lives.
No, we don't need more Ludo Goretz. No more Ludo Goretz.
The good news is Ludo Goretz are already out of the Europa League.
Yeah, exactly.
Ludo Goretz.
And no more Ludo Goretz. It's like a tradition with Inter, playing Ludo Goretz in February. What do you think, Michael? How many? What do you think is going to happen, Michael Gallo?
Michael Gallo. I was going to say which Mike. You got to be specific, but yeah.
Taking over.
I've got my odds at 49.9% that we go through. I've actually
that's really specific.
I'm not confident enough to give it a 50-50. So I'm putting at 49.9% to kind of prepare myself for them not to go through. That's kind of why. But man, I've already listening to Will. He's just like, I don't see how the other match is not a draw. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm looking for that scenario too. I don't see it. It's so much so where I actually went on the other game and I put some money on the draw just to give myself an emotional hedge to prepare myself for it. Just not to root for it, but just to do it, just to have my brain just not really focused on that match, just focused on Inter. But I look at the last 2 years in Champions League, and I felt confident going into match day 6 the last 2 seasons. 2 years ago, we had to win at home against PSV, and we couldn't beat PSV. Last year, we had to play Barcelona. Barcelona I think they rostered not even a full half lineup maybe.
It was a B team.
Yeah. And it was their B team playing, and they couldn't even beat Barca's B team. And I thought we were in good shape to win both of those matches on match day 6. And we're in probably the same shape right now as we were in
I'd say two years ago against PSV, playing at home against the worst team in the group at home, and you need to get a win. And I'm not saying Shakhtar is the worst team in the group. I'm just saying, like, if that's who you want to play at home right now, that's probably the team in the group. And they've got a great shot to get to 3 points. And I'm trying to convince myself, okay, this year is different.
I just hope.
I'm not there yet.
Can I just say, I think it is different. I think the situation is different because we don't have it in our own hands last year. I think that was this year. Sorry, that the previous 2 seasons. You're right. We played a PSV team that were already out and a Barcelona team that were already through, and everybody and their dog expected Inter to get the job done because we were the only team on the pitch with motivation.
Yep,
exactly. And what happened was what's happened several times throughout the last years, which is that Inter couldn't handle a scenario where they were heavy favourites and they had their destiny in their own hands. You know, the other game that springs to mind is that Inter Sassuolo match where everyone was talking about how we had to win 6-0 and then Politano and Berardi did us and then we almost missed out on the Champions League. You know, that unfortunately I think is still a defect that we have, the inability to handle the pressure of having things under our control. And I wonder if the fact that it's not entirely in our hands may actually free them up a little bit and give them take a little bit of the pressure off because they know that even if they win, it's not necessarily going to be enough. And I think on that note, also the other difference this year is that for once our opponents have something to play for as well. Shakhtar can still go through, and in theory they're in a better position than us. So they're not turning up as a sacrificial lamb. So that will sort of boost Inter's concentration as well. So I'm hanging on to, as far as Inter's match is concerned, those are the 2 things that I'm hanging on. Now, I wish that it weren't like that. I wish that we were able to handle easier matches better than hard matches, but I fear that is still a tendency that we have. So given that that's the tendency we have, I think it might help us that we're not in necessarily a straightforward scenario where we know that we go through if we win. So that's my positive spin on that.
Yeah, I understand what Will's saying. Well, I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing. I agree with what you're saying. If you're digging into it, I think you've got the right points and why this is different. I totally agree. I was just kind of looking at, situations where we were heavy favorites and bang, bang, bang in these 3 years. And again, we're in the heavy favorite. But again, I totally see your point and I agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you too. I mean, for me, from the way I look at it like this, if Inter I want Inter to control this game. I want Inter to go into this like I want a 0-0 or I want to draw going into second half. I don't want Inter to Conte to come out and like mop the floor with Shakhtar in the first 20 minutes and it's 3-4-0 up, and then they're not stupid, Real Madrid. They're not going to hurt themselves. They're just going to pass the ball around for 90 minutes if they see that Inter are going to go gung ho. So I want Inter to control this game. I do not want Inter to lead going into the second half. If I want it to be a draw and have Real Madrid have that pressure on Real Madrid because they have to win. Because if they continue to draw, I prefer Inter lose and Shakhtar go through than have Real Madrid go through, because I just cannot stand the notion that they draw and play like that. So I'm petty. I'd rather throw the game and finish last because than help Real Madrid go through and Zinedine bloody Zidane. So I mean, cannot stand.
And if that happens, if they're drawing and we're winning, then I think we should just out of pettiness put 2 goals in our own net.
Yeah, exactly.
To put Shakhtar through.
Exactly. Just to mess with them.
Imagine Real Madrid in the Europa League. That would be
exactly
beautiful. Can I just correct something I said earlier? You're right, Nima. What I meant was the scenario I'm envisaging is where Inter have the opportunity to go through by winning and they don't. So obviously in that scenario, it would be if there's a winner in Gladbach. So the bottle job scenario is if one of them has won and Inter don't win. That's what I meant to say. Because obviously if they draw, we're out, whatever. So that was about 10 minutes ago, so everyone's probably forgotten that. But
yeah, I wish the games were at different times, eh? Like, why couldn't I just not just for the sake?
No, you don't want different times.
No, did you not see the 1982 World Cup?
Yeah, no. Different times is bad. And I mean, ultimately, look, I think both of you guys make really compelling points, and it's such an Inter psychodrama that we could sit here and tie ourselves into knots about which idea, why we should feel better about this, why we shouldn't feel good about this, when in reality this team is 4th place in a group that they should clearly be in the top 2. And that's so very Inter that we are having this scenario right here. But either way, I think before we even, I give my opinion of what they're going to do, let's just say it. You pay Antonio Conte to win this match. You make 12 million euros net a year. You win this match. They paid him. Look, this man is not a tactical genius. Okay, he's not going to change his tactics and find some new way to do things that nobody's done it. His big tactical move is to go back to the other 3-man defense formation that he's been using before January this year, right? You pay him to be mentally tough to when you're a situation with your backs against the wall and you need a win, that he gets the win. So no matter how the other match plays out, no matter whether Inter wins in the first minute or they win in the 90th minute, you are paying him to win this match. And that's really what I'm looking for here. I do think Nima's probably right. It seems third place is less likely than fourth or second, but no matter what the result is, even if they end up in the Europa League and I'm rolling my eyes and I'm going to hate every second of it and it's a waste of time, I'm still going to be more pissed if they don't win, because then at that point, what are we doing here? I feel like every week we could sit here and have a false positive about, oh, Conte got it working this time. Well, right now Inter do have momentum. But you know what? If they lose tomorrow, even if it doesn't materially affect too many things in the bigger picture with Europe, because this team clearly isn't going to win the Champions League or something, it does make me sit there and go, okay, well, what are we paying the guy for if it's a big match and you need a win and they have momentum and he succeeded in going back to the formation and the style of play he wants and they still can't win? That just adds more questions to the bigger picture. Right. As far as tomorrow goes, I can't believe I'm going to say this, guys, but I think they go through. I'm
with you on this. I think so as well. I think that this is one of those situations where everything has gone so, because Inter are not pazza, they're bipolar under Antonio Conte. I mean, he's the most his crazy energy, because I think he is a tactical genius, but there's a thin line between genius and lunacy. Like, I guess
when I say tactically not genius,
if you compare Michael Jackson in 1984, who introduced moonwalk, to the same guy 40 years later who looked like a crazy white woman dressed like Captain Crunch moonwalking on the roof of a car outside of court, turning up 2 hours late. Like, you see that, it swings pretty quickly both ways. And I think right now we're Conte's more in his moonwalk 1984 period, after starting the season like the crazy white woman. So I think that's where we are right now. I think he goes through, and I think Inter go all the way to the final. And I said this before, this will be so weird. They're not going to win it. They'll go to the final, and they'll just produce one madness after another. And it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think Inter will win it, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Inter somehow managed to go through tomorrow and went to the final after that. That would be so Inter.
I mean, I'm not going to go that far, but I sit here and I go back to, okay, well, what would be the most 2020 Inter outcome? The year that we sit here and we're all snake bitten and we think it won't happen is when it does happen. And if you take a bigger picture step back, right, it's funny how those of us in the vortex of this crazy club week in, week out, all of us on this podcast, whenever we're on, it's never easy and it's always exhausting. But then it's funny sometimes when you take a look at what other people think, right? I was on 538 the other week, and I was just a couple days ago going into this last weekend's matches, and I was looking at the probability odds of Inter in the Serie A. They are the strong favorite for second place behind Milan right now. If you told me that this team would finish second going into this weekend, I'd be like, no way, absolutely not, because I've seen too much. But if you take a bigger picture step back and you look at the analytics and you look at everything, it's not always as bad as we think it is when we're in the vortex. And I look big picture and I say, okay, the two best teams in this group by far, talent-wise, need wins to be safe, right? We could sit here and say, well, what will Real Madrid do in the 80th minute? Well, it's not like Zidane is going to yell in the 80th minute to his players, play differently in the heat of a match. They're going to try to go out and win and not leave anything to chance. I look at Inter. We've talked about this, as Nima said, it seems like we're in the good period of Conte right now. They have momentum. They're playing the way that they seem to play best under him in the 3-5-2. They're at home. I think they're both going to win. Sometimes it's not as hard as we make it out to be. And you know what? Maybe I'm crazy. And maybe next week we're on here and I'm just saying I'm an idiot again because this club is just this club. But I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? They have momentum. The two teams that need to win are at home. And Inter know this Shakhtar Donetsk team better than anyone. Like, you'd want to play Donetsk right now more than either of the other two, not just because they're the least talented, but because Inter have seen them between the Europa League and now so many times over the last couple months. I feel like this is going to work. And I don't think they go to the final. I think they go out in the knockout stage to whoever they play. No, but that's fine.
But that's Inter. It's bipolar. It's hell or heaven. Like, there's no in between with this team. It's like it's like Will always says about Conte's teams being marching bands. This is more true than ever with Inter. Either it clicks from minute one or it's a shit show. And I think that now that he's got this going, and we're going to get to this as well. I mean, Brozovic in that deep role is back to his best. This is the best Inter that we have, and how far that will take us, I think this could take us pretty far in Europe, because I don't see Inter winning the Serie A. I really don't. I think Juve and Milan and then also Napoli look better in mentally as well, and it's and you know, from every aspect. But I just don't. I wouldn't be surprised. Like this would be so typically Antonio Conte's Inter, almost knocked out 2 points after 3-4 games in the Champions League, and then go through by the skin of their teeth, and then end up in the final. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be so Antonio Conte.
Happened to Tottenham in our own group 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Final, didn't they?
Exactly. With a certain Christian Eriksen. Right. Yeah. Let's.
When he had hair.
Well, when he had hair and he wasn't being bullied by Antonio Conte, who didn't have hair but has hair now. Let's move on to Bologna. Let's talk about that. Or quickly, I think we've already touched on it, but can we just give a result? I think 2-0 Inter. What about you, Mo? Against Shakhtar.
Yeah, I think 2-0 is good. I think, like you said, it should be more about control and not playing your hand too quick. So yeah, I like a 2-0. But I also resent the fact that Mike lumped me with the rest of you guys, as being a pessimist or not seeing Inter earlier. So I would like the record to state that.
You are.
But yeah, anyway, so yeah,
soul among us, Mo. I would never besmirch your honor like that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so 2-0 for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Mike, what about you?
I mean, I'm not trusting Handanovic to keep a clean sheet at this point. So. I'm gonna say either 3-2 or 2-1. I think it just gets crazy, and I think it gets nervy, but Inter do pull it out. What
about you, Michael Gallo?
I am looking at a 3-1 victory, which is also the score of this Hoffenheim-Augsburg game at the moment. So that's my score, 3-1.
Well,
is that the only reason you're going for that prediction? Just because it's
I saw two numbers and I picked them. That's what it was.
Okay, well, in that case, I've got Brighton Southampton. It says 1-0, so I'll go for 1-0 to Inter. No, I think we're going to win 2-0. I fear that won't be enough given the other result, but I do think we'll get this done.
Yeah, I think so as well. Right, the Bologna game. Let's quickly talk about that as well. That was a game where I've never felt so comfortable and calm watching Inter. I can't even remember. It felt like it was Inter were going to win this game, and it didn't matter how long, what happened. It was just a matter of time before Inter were going to score at least 2-3 goals, and it was awesome to see Achraf Hakimi play like that. Who, together with Milan Skriniar. I mean, all the problems and teething issues of last season with Skriniar, they're gone now. He's adapted to the system, and that makes me incredibly happy, because I think he was close to leaving this summer. We know that he was close to leaving this summer, and I'm glad he didn't. And I'm glad that he's adapted. And also Antonio Conte complimented him after the game, saying that he's happy for him, that he's adapted really well. Inter have got a good defense going on right now, and Skriniar, when Skriniar is enjoying his football, it only helps the team he plays for. Hakimi was brilliant, man of the match without a doubt, not just for the 2 goals, but because of everything he offers in terms of off the ball play, in his runs, the way he cuts in. He's not a wing back. I mean, he's like a third striker, because he also attacks centrally in every attack, and that's. And when it works, and when you have someone covering for him behind him, then Inter have another, have a player attacking from deep into the penalty area, and that can only be good for Inter. But overall, there wasn't really that much more to say other than, but we need to talk about the Christian Eriksen thing, which is the biggest talking point, because for the fifth game in a row, he brings him on in the 91st minute. And this is not a good look. I don't understand what Antonio Conte is playing at here, because he's obviously going to be asked about this situation, because Antonio, you have to remember, Christian Eriksen is not some 18-year-old making a Serie A debut. This is a guy with over 100 Premier League games, one of the best players in the Premier League. He's an experienced player. He was a marquee signing. It's not the first and last marquee signing to have failed. Raja Nainggolan springs to mind, but to use him like this, and the way he looks like a broken man. And to me, this is unnecessary because it hurts his resale value going into January as well. And it's disrespectful the way I see it. But I'm suspecting you disagree, Mo. I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
No, look, I have, like you say, there's no explaining this. I mean, there must be a reason that we don't know. There must be a reason. Either he's trying to stimulate a reaction from Eriksen, or look, I don't know. Like the only positive spin I could have on this is something he's trying to do to somehow reverse psychology, motivate Eriksen somehow. But clearly, it's not working either. But also, like you said, it became the talking point of the game. So it might be part of the pressure relief of the rest of the squad, of the results, taking the spotlight off of the team. I don't know. But it made absolutely no sense to me. I agree. It's it seems like it's clearly intentional. And then when he's asked after the game what his rapport is like with Eriksen, he's like, it's buonissimo, like the other players, like the rapport to other players. It's, I don't know, something's up. So I mean, something's clearly up.
Something is up, and it's not a good look, because it's not good for Inter, this, because it only hurts his resale value. Look, this is also a particular situation the way I see it, because Moratti has been very clear. This guy's going to leave. It's clear. The divorce, they're going to part ways in January, whether it's permanent or loan, but they're going to part ways in January. And everybody knows this. So the best thing to do is don't play him. Let him just train and keep up with it. But bringing him on in the 91st minute like this is humiliating to him. And it feels like he's, in my opinion, it's borderline trying to break a player, because I mean, his face, he's become a meme now. Christian Eriksen has become a meme. That facial expression on him, he looks empty and devoid of joy when playing football at Inter. And this is unnecessary by Antonio Conte, in my opinion. There's no need for it. This is the kind of stuff he does when he texted Diego Costa over the summer that he no longer wants him at the club. Like these childish antics are so unnecessary. There's no need for them. I don't understand what he hopes to achieve by doing this, and I don't understand how Inter can stand to gain from him doing this. Mike, what do you think? Piellucci.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unnecessary, and it's worth noting, with Eriksen, that, I mean, you mentioned Araja Nainggolan, how that didn't work out, right? We look at what happened that precipitated Icardi's departure. There was clear unprofessional behavior on their part. That has not been the case with Christian Eriksen. The only comments he's ever made on it were during international appearances, and he went out of his way to say, number one, look, he wants to play. Literally every player wants to play. Number two, even though he hasn't played, in one of those statements, he went out of his way to say, hey, they were playing well without me and winning in the Europa League. I understand it. He has been as diplomatic as you can be about the situation. And ultimately, it's cruel. It's like you said, and Conte's won. He didn't want him. Beppe Marotta brought him in because, brought Eriksen in because it's better for the bigger picture of the club. Now, not only are they going to sell him, but Bepe's fallen on the sword and said, look, it wasn't a fit for the technical project. He's gotten Marotta to not only sell the player he doesn't want, but admit it's his fault, essentially. And it still isn't enough. And it just, at a certain point, you got to start. Look, I'm an Eriksen guy, all right? You've all heard me in this podcast. I'm a believer, but it's not even about that. It could be about any player when you treat him that way. It's just unnecessary. And it's cruel, and it makes you wonder what people see in playing for this guy, when that's just not how you should treat people as a human being. It's so disappointing, and I feel terrible for Eriksen, because, again, like, if you want to look at how Raja Nainggolan acted unprofessionally certain times, sometimes, when the policy last summer I didn't necessarily agree with, to send him out on loan. I thought he could have contributed to the squad, but at least I looked and said, okay, I understand the pretext for what this was and why they did this. There isn't that for Eriksen. He hasn't played well, fine, but he's been a professional. Don't do something like that to him. Just sit him on the bench. You don't want to play him, don't play him. He doesn't want to play Raja Nainggolan. He doesn't play Nainggolan, right? So just let him sit on the bench for a few more weeks. Let him leave, whether it's permanently or my fingers are firmly crossed that the latest rumor of they'll let him go on loan is true, because I could very much see a scenario in which Conte's done at the end of the year and Eriksen comes back on loan and gets a chance to start over with someone new. But either way, just sit him on the bench. If you're not going to play him, don't humiliate him.
Agreed. Gallo, do you have what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, quickly. It's actually a good point by Mike about the whole, potential loan and then Conte being out and then him getting a chance. I never really thought about that much until, right now. And I actually think if Conte's out at the end of the year, that's a scenario that I would kind of hope would happen because I want Eriksen to have a chance with this club. I don't want him to just come for X amount of months and then just leave and sell him for probably half or 70% of what we bought him for. So, I mean,
the rumors about Arsenal making a £13 million offer for Christian Eriksen is infuriating, and this kind of behavior by Conte doesn't exactly drive that price tag up. And I don't get it. It's just so unnecessary. I mean, it's like Will said a couple of weeks ago about how it would be like the most Inter thing ever to get rid of Eriksen in January, then Conte leaves, and then someone who Max Allegri comes in who needs a number 10, Christian Eriksen, but he's not there. Like that would just be the most Inter thing ever, and I don't want to see that happen.
I would hate if Conte leaves and we also don't have Eriksen next year.
Yeah, Mo.
Yeah. How about anyone fancy a Pogba Eriksen swap?
Mino Raiola back at Inter with Paul Pogba and Antonio Conte. Like,
what are we thinking?
Your solution.
I don't think the values line up. I think Eriksen's value, because it was 20 million, even though we all knew that was an artificially low price to bring him in, 20 million sort of between that and his bad form versus Pogba, as much as Mino is trying to nuke Pogba's value today to get him sold, that price is going to be much higher.
Pogba's practically fully amortized now.
Yeah,
I guess, but I just can't
because he's only got 1 year and a half left on his contract with United, and I think that's something that United could look at. I really do think so. It's just the very idea of Paul Pogba and Mino Raiola at Inter with Antonio Conte, and everything else. I mean, it's like, are we trying to build a nuclear bomb here? Like, what are we what are we trying to do? Like, this cannot end well. And sure, we know that Pogba's worked well with Conte before. I mean, let's be honest, Antonio Conte launched this guy's career. He's never looked as good ever, Pogba, as under Antonio Conte. As the same thing goes with Arturo Vidal. So, and Pogba is hardly, past his prime. So I don't know. I think that's something that could happen. I just don't know if that's something we want to happen. So that's why I'm going to ask you, Mo. Do you want it to happen?
Look, I want the Eriksen situation to be resolved, and I get Mike's point. I get Mike's point about being an Eriksen guy, and Eriksen clearly being a player with a lot of class, and he's top whatever in the world. But the fact is, he'd been out of favor in Tottenham for about a season before arriving here. He has been professional in the sense that he's turned up, but where does professionalism begin and end for a footballer? If you have clear instructions by the coach, by the manager to do certain roles on the pitch, and you're not able to perform them well, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally because of your abilities, then where is professionalism? Is it just turning up for training and doing your best and then not following instructions on the pitch? I don't know, and I don't know if this is the case with Eriksen. But I'm not. I don't like to subscribe to this narrative where the Eriksen experiment is clearly Conte's fault. Conte is the reason why Conte can't develop players. He doesn't like. Hakimi has developed under Conte. He's progressed under Conte. Skriniar has clearly changed his game under Conte and done so very, very well. Lukaku is a world beater at the moment, top 3, top 5, top whatever striker in the world. All happened under Conte. The man knows what he's doing. He's able to develop players' careers.
Absolutely.
So Eriksen really needs to
Bastoni to that.
Up and add Bastoni to that for sure. This goes on.
Barella, yeah.
Sensi never looked as good as Sensi's never looked as good as he has, except when playing for Conte. So the man knows what he's doing, and Eriksen, if he really wants to be committed to this project, needs to do what Skriniar did, which is eat shit for a while and develop and learn and express an intention. But if he's unwilling to do that, treated. What is treated? Lukaku goes out in the press and says, guys, I want to help Eriksen. He has to learn Italian. We want to help him. the team is there. His teammates are there to support him. He doesn't even celebrate with the team after the final whistle. I understand your ego took a bit of a beating, but if you really are committed to this project, then you go celebrate this amazing victory at home with your teammates. So there has to be some personal responsibility, and I'm saying this because I'm not a big follower of the Premier League and of Tottenham in particular, but I understand that this had been his attitude for about a season or less than a season or so before asking for the departure from Tottenham in January last year. So it could be idiosyncratic to his character, this behavior. So if his departure means that we bring that complete midfielder, the Vidal that we're looking for, in the form of Pogba, who's really going to provide that balance to the midfield that we so dearly looked for earlier in the season in the other module that Conte was trying to play, not the flat three in the middle, then why not? Why not? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I see. The thing is, for me, I think he kind of already did, because I can't imagine any other midfielder of his caliber would accept for the 5th game in a row being brought up in the 91st minute like that. I think he shut up. He went out there. He did what he was supposed. I think he showed that he's a loyal team player. But to ask him to go out and celebrate like afterwards a 3-1, this wasn't the Champions League final. This was a game against Bologna at home. There's nothing to celebrate, to be honest. I mean, if it was the game against the Champions League decided to take us through to the group, I'd agree with you even more there. But this was just one of those run-of-the-mill Serie A games that he won. I can understand that he wasn't feeling to celebrate because he felt humiliated. He did his part. He went on there. He didn't complain. He didn't say anything. He did what he was supposed to. And then, so in my opinion, again, I mean, Antonio Conte, as I said, he's a tactical genius, but he can only work with certain, he's an ideologue. He's not pragmatic at all. And he has to have it his way. If he doesn't, everything goes to hell and he's willing to let it go to hell because that's just the kind of guy he is. He's like Pep Guardiola that way. It is my way or the highway with him, with Pep, with Sarri, with all these ideologues. So the way I see it is it was unnecessary and I expect more from Conte and I think it's petty of him to do that. Now, having said that, Pogba as a player, as I said before, he's never been as good as he was under Antonio Conte. So sure, why not? If they can get 80% of what they did together, it's an improvement for Inter for sure. What about you, Will?
It's marching band. It's marching band or bust with Conte, isn't it?
It really is. So are you pro the Pogba Eriksen thing, or what's your thoughts?
I can't see that Inter and United's valuations would be met. I mean, Manchester United have always been asking, upwards of 70-80 million for Pogba. They are not outwardly saying they want to sell him. So even if he's got a year and a half left on his contract, I don't think they're going to be necessarily too accommodating to Inter, particularly when Eriksen isn't exactly a player that they need anyway. That's not really what they're after at the moment, I don't think. So I think it's unlikely. If it were to happen, then yeah, it would certainly be a more functional player. And if we're getting rid of Eriksen, we certainly need to bring someone in, and that's why I don't really believe this loan theory that we've been advocating in case Conte leaves in the summer. Because if Eriksen leaves, then we're already short of midfielders really. Because out of the 8 midfielders that we've got, 4 of them are basically either out of favour, injured, or ignored completely between Sensi, Eriksen, Vecino, and Nainggolan. So if we get rid of Eriksen, we definitely need to bring someone in. I think Pogba would be an incredible buy, but. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can send Pinamonti to Manchester United because he's got Ryla, isn't he? Maybe that'll sweeten it for Ryla.
Yeah, exactly. No, but for me, it's like I look at this and I'm like, Tolisso, Bayern, swap there, all for it. Pogba, Man United, okay, fine. I mean, as long as you can control Raiola, then why not? But and I mean, just the very idea of Raiola and Conte getting into an argument is hilarious. I mean, it's that's good TV. But other than that, if Conte has shown that he can work with Pogba. He's probably the only one to ever manage to work successfully with Pogba. So that I'm fine with that. But I mean, if you can cash in on Eriksen, then Locatelli is my ideal choice because I think he's the next Italian super midfielder as well. So I don't know. There are options out there, but I do agree with what you said, Will. I mean, Vecino is probably going to leave. Nainggolan is definitely going to leave. And so is Eriksen. We need to bring in central midfielder. We cannot finish the 6 months of next season, the end of next season. We're going 6 months with 3 midfielders leaving in January and 1 only arriving. That's just not going to work.
And if you looked at Antonio Conte's head movement when he was asked about Stefano Sensi on Friday, that was a pretty firm shake of the head when he kept on repeating that he's not ready. So at the moment, it feels as if we have 4 serviceable midfielders, and that's not enough if we're going to go ahead to win Serie A. Just one thing on Eriksen, the only half theory that I've heard about why Inter might be doing this, or why Conte might be doing this, I suppose it's not right to say that Inter are doing this. Someone called up on the radio earlier and said, well, you charlatans, you haven't understood. Basically, I've got it all figured out. Basically, Eriksen's got appearance bonuses in his contract, and he's made an agreement with Inter that if he reaches a certain number of appearances, he'll accept whatever destination Inter want, and he'll leave quietly. I don't have any theory. I don't have any information beyond that, but it's the only attempt at a possible explanation that I've had so far. I agree. It seems very strange, and it's a shame that we're not talking about other things, because there would have been other things to talk about. Yet Conte loves creating friction.
Oh, so he loves drama.
Here we are.
He loves drama. He loves drama.
He needs it almost.
Lecce Trump. I call him that for a reason. Mike, I want to hear your opinions. Mike's Pogba. Are you guys for or against the Pogba thing? Michael Gallo, you go first.
I'm not. I think he's going to go back to Juve. That's my opinion. If it could happen to Inter, it's great, but I just see everything kind of lining up back to Juve. That's kind of where I look at it.
What about you, Mike Piellucci? What do you say? You pro Pogba?
I mean, I'd be for it, but I think it's actually Real Madrid. I think that's where this is all been.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I really, Will said what I said. I just don't know how the valuations would work. And again, we didn't even talk about the fit for United. They have Bruno Fernandes. They're not going to need Eriksen. I think we're looking at, this is what's going to be disappointing. Any swap deal they can even conjure up, you're getting the worst midfielder back. Whether it's Paredes, whether it's Corentin Tolisso, whether it's Granit Xhaka, please no.
Anything. Granit Xhaka and Leandro Paredes would piss me off.
Yeah, any player. Right. And so that's my thing. The only reason I think that it's going to be a loan thing, I don't think Inter want that. I just think that this is going to this could very well be a scenario where it's the Nainggolan thing and the Perisic thing and the Icardi thing all over again of they can't get a buyer at their price to monetize immediately. Jesus. And so, I mean, they've nuked his value. And by they, I mean Conte and Eriksen, to be fair. Eriksen hasn't played, exceptionally. I think he plays better than people give him credit for, but he's not looking like Christian Eriksen. But his value is tanked. They're not going to get much of a fee for him. So I kind of wonder if this just ends up being, they just say, you know what, screw it, loan him out. Let's just try to figure something else out to get another midfielder in a different way, whether it's a loan, whether it's, a different swap, way to cook the books. I don't know. I as much as we sit here and say it could be a swap deal, it's enough for us to sit here and say that. And then in 60 days time to realize the reality of, wait, the offer was never there. And I could see that happening.
Yeah, for sure. Right. We do play Cagliari away at the espresso fixture for you guys over in North America. It's a lunchtime kickoff for us in Europe in the CET time zone. Cagliari that is looking very much like a typical Eusebio Di Francesco team. They're all over the place, and I think I'm trying to think how the Champions League result will, in any way, definitely affect the mood going into this game. But given how Inter are playing and looking, I think regardless, Cagliari are not good enough to be able to bother Inter. And for me, I think this is a fairly easy 3-0 victory, 3-1, 3-0 victory. Where are you, Mo, on this?
I think if we do make it through the Champions League group, unlikely so, then we're going to draw the game. I think it's going to be a big hangover, but otherwise, I think we're like you say, it's going to be a straightforward victory. Lukaku on the score sheet again, maybe even Hakimi if he's not rested. But yeah, if we do go through, I would imagine this is a draw.
Will, do you agree with that?
No, I agree with you that Cagliari fundamentally, regardless of what happens in the Champions League, are not, in theory, good enough to beat Inter or to even get a result off them. They've had a lot of problems with coronavirus this year. We don't know if Diego Godin and Giovanni Simeone are going to be back from that. They've got a couple of others out as well. Only Torino, Benevento, and Crotone have conceded more than them so far this season. I hope that this isn't a too tricky a win. I've got 2-1 because I figure that it's 12:30 on a Sunday, so it won't be plain sailing. Instantly, I looked to at our recent history with 12:30 kickoffs, and our most recent 12:30 kickoff was against Cagliari in January, and lo and behold, we dropped points with that 1-1 draw with Nainggolan scoring the equaliser. But no, apart from that, I would be very disappointed if this isn't a win, regardless of what happens in the game against Shakhtar. I'm interested to see what Conte does with Hakimi and Darmian in these two games, because I'm assuming one will play one and one will play the other. But
I want to see them both. I want to see Darmian on the left and I want to see Hakimi on the right. And given that, we saw what Hakimi can do with his left foot, I want to see them swap sides during the games as well. I think that gives Inter a different, like a different tool in their toolbox to have two wing backs that can play on either side. Because Darmian can play on both right and left, and I think so can Hakimi. I think that's something that Inter can use, and I want to play them together. I really, really do.
Yeah, fair enough. To conclude, yes, I think we'll win. I've got 2-1.
Gallo?
Yeah, just quickly adding to that point about Darmian and Hakimi, I think they're both coming off their best games of the year. Would you guys not agree?
No, definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
They are they're two huge beneficiaries of this system. Hakimi has been playing with his back to goal for a month, and suddenly we go back to the old system, and he's galloping forward into space and looks like the player that we thought we were signing. So absolutely.
Yeah, I thought. Obviously Hakimi's was more obvious, but even Darmian, I thought it was his best game of the year too. So it's kind of interesting how they both kind of had them back to back. So it's interesting to see if potentially that they could be both playing at the same time. I definitely welcome that experiment, and definitely if you're playing against Cagliari, I think that's a good maybe time to do it. Depending on how Shakhtar goes. I think they should be comfortable enough to pull out 3 points, regardless of what happens against Shakhtar.
Agreed.
I think.
I would just.
Go.
I just wanted to mention one thing that I forgot. Obviously, we play Napoli in a midweek match, if I'm not wrong, after this game. So I'm expecting Conte to possibly rest someone in defence, and that'll be interesting. So, for the Cagliari game. So. Because these three are, they're great, but one of them's going to have to stop playing at some point because we've got some tough games coming up. So that would be interesting if he does go with a Ranocchio or a D'Ambrosio or God forbid, the other one. That would be an interesting test for this defence. But he's going to have to rotate at some point.
The other one. I honestly say I can't wait for the summer for Kolarov to leave, for Ashley Young to leave, for Ranocchia's contract to expire. Like seriously, it's not been pleasant. Mike, where are you on the Cagliari game?
I want to push back on one thing and one thing only there, Nima, which is don't group Andrea in with the other two. All right,
oh,
Froggy,
come on. He's
Froggy's
a nice
been
guy.
Good. No, he's been the last year in this system. He's been good as a reserve for what he is. If you're going to ask me which of those backup center backs I trust him well before I trust Danilo as a center back or Kolarov. Easily, he does his job. It's been better than it was before Antonio Conte.
How possibly could have been worse than it was before Antonio Conte?
Sure, but I feel like he was good for several killer mistakes every year. And last year, and so far this year, he hasn't played much this year, but last year we didn't see those. He's competent. He is fine as a backup center back. He is good in the room. When Conte sits there and whines about experience, this is a guy who actually brings it and doesn't fuck up. So as far as I'm concerned, he's good by me.
I think you just jinxed. Ranocchia's going to score 3 on goal.
Yeah, probably. Inter's not going through the group. Ranocchia is going to let in a howler, and Christian Eriksen's going to get sold for 7 million euros. Book it all down.
It can't. Given that he doesn't trust Pinamonti, it can't be long before Conte follows Spalletti in doing the Ranocchia centre forward experiment when we're losing a match.
No.
Spalletti tried that against Bologna, didn't he? And
I love that. That's my favorite part of the year is when he goes center forward.
So I do think Yeah, I do think Inter win this match. I don't feel good at all about that Napoli match midweek after an emotional high or whatever the emotional high or low will be of the Champions League. There will be some emotional reaction followed by a weekend game. I'm terrified of that Napoli fixture, but I think Inter will go in to the Napoli match with some form of momentum, either winning one or both of these next two games. Put me down for a 3-1 win. And I'd say the thing that I'm here to watch, Hakimi's part of it, the other part of it, and we saw both of them, not just on Saturday, but last week in the Champions League too, Brozovic and Hakimi. Like at the point when Conte wants to exile Eriksen, we go back to 3-5-2. That's all well and good. But this only works if one or both of them is creating, because there are not many creative outlets left in this team behind the forwards. Clearly, all three of the strikers can make some magic. I would say after them, these two are the next best options. And for Brozovic in particular, I mean, right now, I think Brozovic is, I'm cautiously optimistic. He's getting back into form the way he's played the last couple weeks. But right now, I think we can all safely say the only midfielder we trust week in, week out is Nicolo Barella. If Brozovic can come back and look like Brozovic circa 2018 and the first part of last season, then that will be massive for Inter going forward.
He looked good in the first half against Bologna, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. That pass was beautiful. I sit here and I whine about nobody creating opportunities to the middle, and then he did it. He created one of the best ones, maybe the best one from a pass all year.
Yeah, for sure. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the Frog of the Week, which is presented by Mr. William Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yeah, there's a Cagliari link to this week's Frog as well, because it's a player who used to play for Cagliari back in the distant 2015. It's Duje Chop, who I'm nominating for this week's Frog of the Week award. He's currently playing in Belgium for Standard Liège, and he had a very unfortunate night in the Europa League on Thursday. They were playing Rangers. It was 1-1 in the first half, and he scored the goal to make it 2-1 just before half time. But in doing so, he had the ultimate nightmare football experience. There was a cross that came in from the right-hand side. He threw himself towards the back post to knock it in, and he succeeded. But in doing so, he managed to clatter into the post with his legs either side of said post, and you can imagine the pain that followed. I tweeted a video of it at the time because it's the kind of thing that I thought that other people needed to experience as well as myself. Any male that watched that cannot watch that without wincing.
It was horrible.
There was a very famous episode of Phil Babb playing for Liverpool in the Premier League 20 years ago, and he actually his was a bit different because he was actually on the floor sliding towards the post, whereas this one was he was at least stood up here. But Chop went down in agony and he had to be taken off, and it wasn't even worth scoring because they ended up losing. So that's probably the extra Frog ingredient for this week. So it was very unfortunate, but that's really sort of Frog territory, I'm afraid. So I'm going
that's very much Frog territory. I'd say that's very Frog territory. Let's move on to something a bit more negative. This week's Moggi, which is presented by Mr. Mike Piellucci.
The actual answer is the whole subbing in Eriksen to break his spirit in the 90th minute thing, because that's just mean. And I think the Luciano Moggi is a mean guy. But having done that, let me just say, and this breaks my heart to say this, because I don't think there is I've been an Inter fan for about 17 years now. I don't think there is a player who has deserved good times more and probably will not get them than Samir Handanovic. So I hate saying this, I do, but it's gotten untenable. And I bring it up this week because that disallowed third goal against Gladbach was a pass. It was a pass of medium velocity in terms of what that shot basically looked like. And yes, there were screeners, but Samir Handanovic 2 years ago gets that ball. Not even Samir Handanovic at age 28. Samir Handanovic 2 years gets that ball, and he can't even manage to move over and react fast enough. Nima said it a few days ago when we were talking on Twitter that it felt like he moves in slow-mo now, and that is how it is. And it's just heartbreaking to see this because he's stuck through a lot of terrible, terrible times, and he deserves a Javier Zanetti-esque great moment in the sun, but I just don't think that can happen with him in net anymore. And it's ironic that we are sitting here thinking about this, because I remember when Inter bought him, and I remember thinking, as a lot of Inter fans did, well, Julio Cesar still has some time left. Let's not do this. Why are we pushing out Cesar to bring in a younger keeper? But the reason Inter did it, and it was one of the few good moves the club was making at the time, was you don't want to be a year too late. You want to be a year too early. We were a year early with Julio, and sure enough, once he left, he didn't have much left in the tank. They're now a year too late on Samir Handanovic, and it is painful. And one of these storylines the rest of this year is going to be how much can Inter work around this? How much can the defense compensate for him? Because there was a time, again, not even 4 or 5 years ago when he was among the best keepers on the planet, even 2 years ago when Samir could reliably still bail you out of matches. Now you have to work around him, and it pains me to watch what he's become, and it hurts. But the truth is, they can't rely on him. I don't think they're going to rely on Radu anytime soon. This will not be resolved until the summer. And so we all have to collectively cross our fingers and just hold on for dear life that the next 5 months, the mistakes can be worked around, because there will be mistakes.
Agreed. It's really sad to see. Let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which is presented by Mr. Michael Gallo.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
As I'm about to tell you guys the Moratti of the week, I'm on the Inter website and I see a picture of Handanovic, Nainggolan, and Ashley Young. They're all dressed in Christmas clothes. And they all have gifts, wrapping gifts. And you got to look at Nainggolan's face wearing these clothes and the hat and the gift. It is very awkward. I love it.
When I saw it, I wanted to tweet at him saying, "Blink twice if you need help." Like that. That's how he looks. He looks so miserable in that photo.
Yeah. At least Handanovic is smiling, but Ashley Young doesn't look like he wants to be there either. But it's definitely
Nainggolan looks miserable. Like he looks like he's been kidnapped. Like it really is. Blink twice if you need help. Like
yeah.
Is that smile from Handanovic? Is that photoshopped? That smile from Handanovic. Credit to whoever got him to pose for that.
Oh, he was definitely not agreeing to that. He had to be paid extra to do it or something. It doesn't look good. So our Moratti of the week. Look, a couple of weeks ago, obviously we saw Maradona pass away. It was very unfortunate. I think he's the greatest player to ever play the game, even though he had a shorter career. But I will say that it was a great gesture that the city of Naples and De Laurentiis, they decided to name the San Paolo as the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. I know it was kind of reported when he passed away, but they just made it official a couple of days ago. I think it's a great gesture to him, and he deserves it. And Laurentiis had a quote saying, "I believe it is the right to name the San Paolo Stadium after you, so we can keep you with us as a witness to the excellent path this team has taken." So it's going to be great to see that the stadium that has been such a great fixture in Serie A all these years is now named after one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time. So it's great to see, and I'm happy they did it.
Amen. Right, that's all we had time for this week. I'd like to thank Chris Williams for joining us, and also you, Mr. Positivity, Mo Nassar.
Thank you very much. It was a great episode. Look forward to, hopefully 6 points, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm also getting a little bit positive. I don't know. I'm probably going to be disappointed, but I'm carefully optimistic. Will, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll join you on the ill-fated positivity train for this week.
Sounds good. Mr. Michael Gallo.
Thanks for having me, guys. And we've got a Slovenian ref against Shakhtar, so Handanovic may be able to swing him a little bit. So that's good news.
Mr. Mike Piellucci.
Always a pleasure, boys. Let's hope we're celebrating this time next week.
Absolutely. And as always, I'm your host, Nima Tavallaey, wishing you a good week. Stay safe, health for you and your loved ones. 6 points, and sempre e solo forza Inter.